All right, you cool cats and kittens. We're talking about Esoteric Enterprises today. It is a game by Cave Girl, aka Emmy Allen. Actually, I think it's AKA's work the other way around. But basically, I wanted to do a video to kind of talk about what your players have to benefit from this game. So if you're interested, you can let them listen to this and see if they are interested in it. Pretty cool, huh? So what is Esoteric Enterprises? Basically, it takes old school D&D rules and changes them and changes the aesthetic massively. So what you're going to end up with is a very easy to learn system, especially if you're familiar with D&D, that has a completely new aesthetic, an aesthetic that is focused on the concept of the Occult Underground, which is basically a world like ours, but supernatural stuff is very real, and you have people working underground, both literally and not physically, literally and metaphorically, who are involved in the secret societies, feuding with each other, trying to become the most powerful. So you have people dealing with magical artifacts and cults and dark gods and crazy monsters and things of that nature, all that happening under the noses of everyone else. And people don't realize it because the government is censoring it, so they don't know what's going on, and also because it sounds crazy. I mean, look at the tabloids. That gives you an idea of what to kind of expect. Reading this, I kind of pictured Supernatural, even though Supernatural might not actually fit this aesthetic because the Winchesters die pretty frequently, so never mind. I guess it works. The characters will live double lives. So the kind of adventures that they might be going on include such things as raiding sewers for treasure, delving into crypts, delving into the abandoned warehouses where other cults are gathering to find their magical secrets. Players are rewarded for basically finding treasure, so it's an XP for treasure situation. If you're familiar with old school game design, you know that what this kind of leads to is less tactical combat focus than the kind of thing you get with a lot of modern role-playing games. So basically, players will want to be more cautious. And this is also reflected in just how damn lethal the system can be. So one of the things that's really neat about the system is it takes hit points and it breaks it into two different categories. You have grit, which is basically your ability to avoid getting punishment, avoid being harmed. And then you have flesh. That's what happens whenever you actually are harmed. So you have usually not a whole lot of flesh, but you have a lot of grit. So grit is bypassed whenever something happens to you that completely would avoid being able to be dodged, basically, or whenever you receive a critical hit. So because of that, it's feasible that if on an unlucky streak, a character might get killed pretty quickly. So whenever you hit 0 flesh, then at that point, whenever you take damage, you take horrible wounds. So the horrible wounds are generated by looking at a table. So let's say you took ballistic damage and you took 10 points of it. 10 points is very severe, but it's possible. And what that would translate to is your head gets blown the fuck off of your body. On the other end, it might be that you just took took a flesh wound. You're bleeding. It's not lodged in there. You're not losing a limb, but you're bleeding out. And if you're not taken care of, then you're going to die eventually. And then there's all these things in the middle that might be, like your arm was blown off. So now the doctor is going to have to give you a prosthetic limb. Or your spleen was blown up. So now the doctor is going to have to find a compatible organ or, give it a shot anyways with a random one and stick it in your body with an organ transplant. So I'm going to get into the doctors and all that stuff later, but that's just to give you an idea of just how brutal this stuff is. So for the player classes, you have a bodyguard, which is a tough fighter that has their eyes peeled for potential threats. You have the mercenary, who is your typical ass kicker. Both of those come with a few extra combat maneuvers that they can use. They're not very complex, but it adds a little bit of depth for them. You have the criminal, who is your skill monkey. You have the occultist, who basically is akin to a wizard, but there are some very neat new mechanics that make it more special. There is the mystic, which is kind of thematically between a cleric and a warlock, as they worship some kind of creature, usually, some kind of entity. And in order to get the powers or to use the powers that patron grants, they have to appeal to them on a regular basis. So, for instance, if I want to cast a healing spell, for one thing, I have to roll to even see if I would have had that in the first place. But let's say that I do have it. Then, whenever I actually need to use it, I need to spend a round pleading to my god, or not my god, the creature, to let me use that power. So because of that, you don't run out of spells as a mystic, but you don't always just make them happen. You also have the Explorer, who's a highly survivable and stealthy individual who is horrible at combat, but they're great at reconnaissance and getting out of sticky situations. You have Doctors, who are non-magical healers that also are able to partake in bizarre Frankenstein-like experimentation, such as taking the glands out of some kind of horrible creature and putting it into one of your player character's bodies. And if it takes, then all of a sudden they have a new power at their disposal. So there's a lot of opportunities here for cool-ass things to happen that aren't just explicitly woven into the system. It's not the feature, customization gaming that you get from like 5th edition, for example. This is stuff that emerges through the gameplay, which is fantastic. I love it. Then you have the Spook. So the Spook is a catch-all for non-human PCs that ranges anywhere from a construct to a ghost to a plant-based life form. My personal opinion, I think the Spook is going to be a fan favorite of people because they can be so crazy. But because of the fact that they're not human, they really can't go to the convenience store and talk to people. So there are some drawbacks to it as far as that kind of social interaction goes. They're probably not going to do a whole lot on the surface unless they're doing something illegal. So let's get into the particulars. Spellcasting is a little different. If you're familiar with Vancian spellcasting, the whole idea is you memorize a spell. It takes a while, and then whenever you're in the moment, you finish the incantation, the spell goes off, and then it's gone. So that's like kind of typical D&D spellcasting. This is a little different, not much different, but a little different, because you can kind of tweak it. There's some really cool features here. So the occultist can memorize a spell of a higher level in a lower level spell slot. So this is kind of like overclocking your hard drive, but it can be very dangerous because you're taxing your brain in a way that it's beyond your basic capabilities. So whenever you cast that spell, things can go horribly wrong. In a similar vein, you can also customize spells on the fly, but doing so, again, means things can go horribly wrong. They don't get their spells from scrolls. Instead, they find them in grimoires. And the system book actually has a list of grimoires with titles, with authors, and with what spells are included. So it's very evocative. It gives you a lot of flavor. Very cool stuff. Let's see. Another thing that the occultists can do that's very neat is after they have expended a spell, once they have casted it, they can rememorize that spell or another spell in that slot by taking a turn. So a turn in old D&D terms is 10 minutes. So this is like a dungeon turn, or an exploration turn, rather. So, or they can cast a spell that is unmemorized as a ritual in 10 minutes. So, and they can do that with any spell. So the mystics have spells that are granted to them by their patrons. They have a different way of casting those. So, like I said, they have to plead to their dark lord to make the spell happen. So what they do have is they have a charm skill. So this is one of the skills that the other classes don't get, except for potentially the criminal, which can get any skill. But the charm skill, basically, you can use it in social encounters to help your reaction rolls be better. And if you are trying to cast a spell, you have to make a charm check with your patron to see if they grant you the spell. So you start at this with a 3, I believe. So you have a 3 in 6 chance. So it's 50-50, not considering your modifiers. If you have a high charisma, then your chances could be even better. But the idea behind it being that you are not just given this power, and then the deity doesn't care at that point. You're given the power on a basis of please, 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 please kind of thing. So it's much more interesting in that kind of capacity, if you ask me. And I was talking about 3 and 6. So basically the way that works is you roll a d6. If you get a 1, a 2, or a 3, you pass. If you roll above a 3, you fail. That's how the skill system works in general. It's a d6 skill system. Very easy to learn, very simple. Some people aren't really used to it. For some reason, it kind of blows their mind if they're used to the d20 and add skill level thing. But this is very simple, very easy. Just give it a chance. Trust me, it's awesome. So then you have party initiative, meaning that both sides roll a d6. When I say both sides, like both sides will have a leader for their party. And then the leader rolls a d6, adds their dexterity modifier, and the highest roll goes first. So what this means is your party gets to go first or last. And whenever they start going, you just have people say, okay, I'm going to do this. All right, you work that out, you get it done. Next person says, okay, I'm going to do this. All right. So it's a lot more fluid. It's less of that, okay, now I need to check the list. All right, it's this person's turn. And then that person's like, oh, well, that person before me just did this, so I need to change what I was going to do. It doesn't happen quite as often because you have more people that, they already knew what they were going to do. They're going to stick to that. So things tend to happen a lot more fluidly because of that. Attack rolls are pretty standard fare. It's d20 plus attack bonus plus strength or dexterity as it applies depending on the weapon and the type of attack. As I said, there are unique moves that can be used, especially for the bodyguard and the mercenary, but they are very simply calculated. They're not complex in any way. Try and summarize everything. If this all sounds good to you, you should give it a try. Esoteric Enterprises is a modern-day role-playing game where you venture into the world of occultism and the supernatural. You explore the dark, unknown, and perilous in order to recover treasure and items of magical importance, while feuding with other cults and other individuals in this underground world, and avoiding the cops and the government. It's an easy system to learn because it's based in D&D, but it has brutal, sometimes unforgiving combat that makes the whole experience very terrifying and very tense. The party will be full of miscreants that range from bored rich people and doctors who lost their licenses to worshippers of dark forces and literal monsters. If this sounds right up your alley, then for fuck's sakes, ask your GM to run it. Thank me later.